Welcome to Leveraging Inspiration, the Inspired Patent Podcast, where we help you understand and leverage your intellectual property. I'm your host, Wayne Carroll, and I'm joined with David Blacklage this week, and we're excited to bring you insights and stories from the success and failures of others and teach you how to win at the game of intellectual property. I always start with a disclaimer. We are attorneys, but this podcast is not providing legal advice, and nothing in this podcast should be construed as creating an attorney-client relationship. This episode, we're going to talk about crowdfunding, the good, the bad, and the ugly of crowdfunding. So with crowdfunding, oftentimes it's a direct to your consumers, seeing if you can come up with a model where you get your consumers to contribute or invest in your company. So David, have you dealt with companies or advised people on crowdfunding before?
I have, actually. Thanks. It's a good way for businesses that are not typically tuned into other angel groups to get what I would call especially local investors. And some are successful, some are not. And the biggest thing, Wayne, if I may, is that there's an SEC rule, a Securities and Exchange Commission rule called Regulation CF for crowdfunding. The key is there's very, very specific legal things you have to do if you become a crowdfunder. You can't just walk up to people and make what the law calls a general solicitation and ask people for money. It's very, very formal. So it sounds informal, and it is in a sense because it's a broad offer to many people. However, you still have to follow all the rules. And I can go into a couple of examples if you wish.
Okay. Before we get to that, sometimes I think crowdfunding is used, the term is used when we're talking about something like Kickstarter, where people are going to commit to buying your product before you sold it. Is that crowdfunding in the legal sense?
No. That is basically pre-buying. There's other terms other people use, but you're offering people discounts in the future. It's kind of like a layaway plan in a sense. It's not exactly, but for lack of a better phrase, it's a layaway plan. It's a Christmas club. So you put away money, you give someone money and say, great, you're an early buyer. You get a 50% discount on our product. So that's a Kickstarter. You're buying in advance and you're receiving a product itself. Crowdfunding deals with people when you're buying equity in a business. So it's very, very different, Wayne.
Okay. With crowdfunding, let's talk about some of the legal limitations and who you can get to invest and how much they can invest.
So under Regulation CF for crowdfunding, it's important that, I guess, in a back up half a step, in a general sense, you must have either an SEC registered securities document or qualify for an exemption before you ask anyone for money, and especially before you take even $1 of investment in your business. The SEC rules are very particular. You have to post your crowdfunding campaign on an approved website, on an approved organization that has a number of crowdfunding opportunities there. The other thing that people seem to be unaware of is there's no such thing as an exemption for friends and family. Even if it's Aunt Millie and she wants to give you a check for equity in the business, she gets securities documentation. There's no such thing as a friends and family exemption. All those things combined mean that you need to talk to people, a qualified securities attorney, before you ask anyone for money, and especially before you start accepting money. Even a small amount of money in a small business, the SEC is very strict. They probably wouldn't find you. But if someone makes an investment in your business and has a falling out with you, one phone call and the state and federal governments are required by law to open up a securities fraud investigation against you. So talk to that attorney first to make sure of what your requirements are for crowdfunding for your business. There's one other determination I'd like to mention, Wayne, if I may.
Sure.
And that is the regulation allows for both accredited and unaccredited investors in your business. An accredited investor by rule, SEC rule, is a person with more than $1 million of investable money. That's accredited. Less than that, you're unaccredited. The law allows for both to be part of your business, but they do look at those type of investors in a different light. If you have $1 million or more of investable cash, the federal government assumes, for better or worse, that you're a sophisticated business person. So they tend to want to protect unaccredited investors because they assume that they're not as sophisticated in these types of investments. So you want to make sure of when you're setting up your crowdfunding campaign, talking to advisors, talking to your securities attorney, that you're focusing your efforts on the right people that would fund your business.
Okay. And we've already talked about angel investors and venture capitalists. If your company has the potential to grow and is going to seek investments from those people, how does equity crowdfunding, is it difficult to move from an equity crowdfunding to angel or venture capitalist money?
It tends to be smooth if you do it well, but I will say, and this is my personal opinion, but I think it's correct, future investors putting a lot of money in your business that are accredited, either accredited angel investors or VCs, a lot of them don't like a lot of unaccredited investors in your business, what we call the capitalization table, the equity table showing who owns pieces of the business. And one example, candidly, Wayne, is that accredited investors, when they lose all their money on an investment, they tend not to sue. Unaccredited investors might be putting in a lot of their net worth into a business, even though the money amount is small, but they might get upset and try to sue people. I've not known any accredited investors that have, for businesses that have operated properly, they just failed because businesses didn't work out. I don't know anyone that's actually sued anyone in court. But so the higher level investors look a little bit skeptical, not entirely, but a little bit skeptical on early unaccredited investors through things like crowdfunding. So it's not a lot worse, but it is a little bit of a lesser position to have if you've taken crowdfunding before.
Okay. One thing you mentioned earlier, and we didn't really get into it, is we've been talking about investors, and you said sometimes a loan makes more sense. If you can get the money you need to grow your business with a loan, you can clearly see what the cost of that loan is over the long term. It's just the interest. What is the cost compared to that of investors and giving away equity?
So the good news about a loan is you're not giving away a piece of your business. The bad news is in equity, you don't guarantee them anything. No dividends, interest payments, capital appreciation. It's entirely on the investor's risk if you make money and able to pay them back, okay? However, on a loan, you might agree to wait 3 to 6 months to start the payments. Once you start, you have to make those interest payments to the investors and or agree on how to pay back the principal over time or have a balloon payment. So equity capital, people own a piece of your business and have a lot of rights in how they talk to you as far as their ownership of the business, but there's no guarantee on a payback. However, the loan, you're expected to pay back those individuals.
Right. And sometimes with loans, they require you to put collateral, like you may have your home as a potential collateral if you have a business loan and it fails.
It's called a personal guarantee. A lot of people, for small businesses, they'll want a personal guarantee. If you have a business like a limited liability company or a corporation, LLCs are probably far more common for small business. There's a shield of liability there. However, a bank or a lender, construction loans, whatever, they may say, no, we want to have your personal guarantee. So literally, you take away your legal liability protections. It's a big difference. And you have to be able to say to yourself, am I going to make these loan payments on time? Am I going to have the revenue to be able to make those loan payments? That's the big question.
Yeah. One of the other questions around crowdfunding is there a resource? Where would someone go to start looking at different crowdfunding platforms? And is that something you could also advise people on?
That is something I can advise on. I have other contacts as well. Choosing your attorney is critical in our industry, being able to make sure the client feels comfortable. But a lot of people have experience there. If you just Google a regulation CF, Charlie Frank, or just Google crowdfunding platforms, pages of opportunity to read will pop right up, and you'll be able to make that determination.
Okay. Yeah,
That's a good start. That's a good start. But then again, once you have some knowledge, you can then go to an attorney and say, I found these things. Let's talk about how I should do it. You still should talk to an attorney before you start asking people for money and create what we call your pitch deck, your information you give to potential investors about your business. Very important to have that reviewed by an attorney as well.
Okay. Yeah, one of the things about crowdfunding that, as I've talked to people, is it's oftentimes you need to put a lot of marketing into this crowdfunding. Even if you go on one of these platforms, some people think, well, if I go on the platform, people will just come to me. And sometimes their first attempt fails because they didn't do anything to actually reach out and attract people. Have you seen that as well?
Yes. Crowdfunding, getting on a crowdfunding platform that your attorney and you agree is appropriate is step one. Step two is you still have to talk about your business somehow. People still need to hear why they should be investing with you. Okay. And if you don't have a good package together, and like I said, like a pitch deck, and I actually teach clients on what I call fundraising 101 and how to present your company. People want to know basic information on your company. And if you do that well, you attract attention. If you don't do it well, you could find yourself to not be successful. So when you talk to crowdfunding platforms, they will also help you with what materials you need and what kind of marketing you should do or what's legal to do. And you should also be asking them about their success rate. How successful are you getting any investment at all? Or how successful are you in getting all of the investment that your client wanted? Very, very important to ask those kinds of questions too, Wayne.
Okay, well, we're out of time for today. We'll have David Blacklage's contact information in the show notes. So go there to find out more, or you can also call me and I'm happy to connect you to David anytime. This is Wayne Carroll. I'm joined with David Blacklage, and this is Leveraging Inspiration.
Thanks for having me, Wayne.
You're welcome.
Sorry, EV Box 2G, new motion to shadow and all these kinds of things. So it's certainly an interesting and a challenging and a global market.